All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this final webinar in the series. The name is Fair for All, Future Trends, AI in Education, Predict How AI Will Shape Language Learning, Classroom Dynamics, and Teacher Roles, that Oresa is hosting in partnership with iSense. And because this is our last webinar of the series, and I see that a lot of you have been with us since September, so thank you for being here. I'd like to take a moment to express my heartfelt thanks to Anita Premkumar and David Nielsen and their team at iSense for their hard work in designing and putting together this amazing program, and for inviting so many experts to present to us throughout these 7 months that we've been together. So very grateful they reached out to us to partner and collaborate on this project. A little bit of housekeeping for everyone. So just make sure that your microphone is off, please, until you need to activate it to speak. There is also interpretation offered for this presentation. So if you want interpretation, please select the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select the language of your choice. So this will be an interactive discussion today. So for Q&A, we encourage you to use the chat or just use the raise hand function and unmute yourself when we call your name and ask your question. And now I'd like to welcome Julien L'Enfant and Sandra Borges with us today. We're very happy to have you both. And they will be presenting today. So Julien L'Enfant is an educational developer at St. Mary's Universities with over 27 years of experience in educational management, teacher education, and training. Currently pursuing a PhD in e-research and technology-enhanced learning at Lancaster University. Julien focuses on the role of GAI, emerging technologies, and inclusive education in higher education. His forthcoming paper, AI as a Reflective Coach in Graduate ESL Practicum, explores innovative applications of AI in teacher development. Julien is committed to advancing the integration of AI into teaching and learning practices to create more inclusive and effective educational environments. Sandra Borges has 20 years of experience as an English language teacher. She holds a master's degree in teaching English as an international language from St. Mary's University, postgraduate degrees in bilingual education and English language teaching, and a BA in languages. She also has earned Delta, M2, CELTA, ICELT, and TKT certifications. Sandra is a team lead and EAL instructor at iSense, teaches in Dalhousie University's English in Canada program, and tutors online for the Oxford Teacher Academy offered by Oxford University Press UK. Julien and Sandra, welcome, and over to you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for this introduction. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this session. It's really a pleasure to have you here, right, Julien?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. So before we start, I'll just share my screen and read the land acknowledgement. Just give me 1 second. Yes. Okay. Can you see it? Yes, I think so. Yeah. All right. So iSense acknowledges that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded past and present territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. At iSense, as we help settle newcomers to Nova Scotia, we also teach them about the history and rights of Indigenous peoples in Mi'kma'ki. We honor the enduring presence and contributions of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are dedicated to fostering meaningful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. We also acknowledge that people of African descent have been in Nova Scotia for over 400 years, and we honor and offer gratitude to those ancestors of African descent who came before us to this land. All right, so just let me stop sharing. Okay, yes. Great. So again, it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. First of all, I personally wanted to thank Julian for accepting my invitation to be presenting this session with us. And Julian, we do appreciate your support, your presence here. Thanks again for collaborating with us today.
You're very welcome, and hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been in Halifax now probably for over 20 years, and I think all my time in Halifax at some point has involved collaborating with iSans, even back in the Hilk and Misa days. So it's a pleasure to actually be here with you today. English language teaching and training is my field, is my background, and so so it's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So, now that you are more familiar with us, we decided that we would like to introduce ourselves again, but just taking into account our experience with technology in education and also our AI experiences. I'll go first, and then Julian goes right after me. So, when we started preparing for this session, it came to my mind that 20 years ago, I was writing my final essay to complete my bachelor's degree in languages. And the topic that I chose was why Google Translator won't replace English teachers. I was about to start my career, and little did I know that 20 years later, I'd be here talking about the use of AI in the classroom and perhaps asking myself the same question. Is AI going to replace English teachers? Well, what I can tell you is that I've always been in favor of technology in the classroom, but I've always kept in mind that our work as language teachers goes beyond teaching a language. And during all this time in my career, I've used many tech tools. It started with translators, Google Translator, online dictionaries. Then we moved to smart boards, and during that time, we thought that smart boards would change completely the way we taught, right? And then during the pandemic, all of us, we transitioned to teaching 100% online. And I think that was the period that not only me, but all of us, we learned about how to integrate online tools to our teaching. And here we are again talking about the use of AI. And I may be naive like the young Sandra and believe that AI won't replace us. But actually, what I think is that it may replace us in many tasks we do right now. And that's okay as long as we understand our roles in this new teaching world, I guess. So to conclude my tech introduction, I'd like to say that I'm not an AI expert, but I've been doing my best to learn how to integrate and how to use AI tools in my classes and how to leverage these tools to our advantage as teachers and as students. So now I would like to invite Julian to share a little bit of his experiences with us as well.
Thank you, Sandra. Yes, technology has been an interest of mine, I think, all the way through my teaching career since I first trained in 1996. So I remember actually in 2001, my first year as a CELTA tutor, our technology session that we have on a CELTA course involved searching the web and finding Bryan Adams lyrics. So we've come a long way since then. And then the pandemic really heightened my interest, I suppose, in technology and how it was being harnessed for learning and teaching and assessment. And that's what led me to the PhD in e-research and technology enhanced learning. And I've been fortunate enough through that program. Well, I started that in January 2023, and that was just a few months after ChatGPT was released. And so I've really kind of fallen into the AI, jumped onto the AI bandwagon, I suppose, and I use it in my day job as an educational developer, in whether it's summarizing and looking through documents, in my research for the same purpose, also searching for papers. Speechify, text to speech is a lifesaver. And then my interest, I suppose, in terms of the research side, And I struggle with the research side because I feel like I'm a practitioner at heart, but the research side is trying to um, support teachers, but in my context, I suppose support student teachers reflective practices, especially in graduate programs where, for example, I may have 51 in a cohort, currently 22 in a cohort, and then supporting them when they're out in the community is very different than if I'm working with a CELTA group where the ratio is 1 to 6. So harnessing AI to help me supervise and also help teachers with their reflective practices in a collaborative way is something that I'm working on and interested in, and hopefully will continue to form my thesis moving forward. The paper that was mentioned at the outset actually got published at the end of November, thankfully. And I have another one in press that I actually wrote nearly a year ago, which was using ChatGPT 4 at the time with volunteer ESL teachers from Halifax Public Libraries to help them with lesson preparation and task design. So that will hopefully come out soon as well.
Awesome. Yes. So, and we decided, Julian and we've decided to have a conversation with you, the participants of this session today, because this, as it was said in the beginning, it was a series of webinars and a lot has been said already. So instead of preparing a formal presentation, we've collected some questions. And so thanks all teachers who sent their questions to me last month. And we are going to start with these questions so we can share not only our opinion, but also some resources with you in the chat. And we would like to listen to you as well. So feel free to open your mics or use the chat to communicate with us. And we are going to start with one first question, and let's see how it goes from now. All right. Yes. So I can see the chat as well. I think everybody is just connected with us. And I have one question that is not actually in the script, Julian. Where can we find this article that you've just mentioned?
Well,
Is it available online?
it is
Can
available
you?
online, yes.
Yes.
In a European journal. I'll find the
All
link
right. Yes, if you
later.
can later share. All right. So the first question, I'll ask you, Julian, and then of course we can just share ideas as we go. But there was a question in this pool of questions that the instructors sent me that was, how do we teach students to use AI to help them, but not to do things for them? How can we change that mindset? So what would you say?
That's a very good question. And if at any point I say something you don't agree with, feel free to put it in the chat or put up a hand and contradict me. If I say something that's not true to your context, again, feel free to do the same. I suppose if I say something that you also like, then feel free to like it. Hopefully we can keep this interactive. So I'll just state the question again. So how do we teach students to use AI to help them, but not do the things for them? And that I'll address the elephant in the room that's difficult. It'd be like asking students to go from point A to point B and not use a GPS and just give them a map, an old-fashioned map. If something is available, then more often than not, we tend to take the easy route. So with that said, I think explicit instruction and modeling what you want from the students is really important. It's something I talk about with my graduate students. I talk about with faculty here when I talk to them about AI. Is actually have conversations with your students as best you can. That might have to be through a translator if you're dealing with low literacy, I'm sure, students, if assuming they're going to be accessing AI, but in a way that you can talk to the students. Focusing on the learning process. Now, this is something that is coming out throughout the literature. And I read ELT literature and I read higher education from my context. And this is more to do with assessment, I presume, in that rather than us being focused on a product, we're more interested in how students do something. And so we're trying to focus more on that process. That's coming out a lot in the literature. And I'll give you one more, establishing clear guidelines and rules. Now, we also understand that what we do in the classroom, we can control to a certain extent. What happens outside of the classroom, we can tell them not to use it. It doesn't mean they won't. But I think it's establishing those clear guidelines and what you expect, and having an open conversation about these about this technology is really important.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And what I've been doing as an EAL instructor is trying to have more open conversations with the students because, well, considering the context that we teach at iSense with immigrants and refugees, we may believe that everybody now knows about AI and how to use it, but we still have students who don't have any idea on, how to download it, how to use it. And some of them, as you said, they just use it as a shortcut. Like one of my students told me, well, Sandra, I think you don't need to teach us writing anymore because now we can use AI for that. So that's what they think, right? And I thought it was wonderful that he mentioned that because then we could discuss the advantages, the disadvantages, and when we can use AI and how we can, of course, implement it if we are, especially if they are now here in Canada working and they need AI as a tool to write and communicate better. But at the same time, they have to be critical on what the AI presents to them. And I also believe that it's not only through one or two conversations that we can perhaps open the discussion. And then I don't think we have to convince them about anything, but we have to show them different sides so that they can make informed decisions and start paying more attention to the language that they see when they are using AI and what is the output that they are getting from this robot that they are using, and how this can be really helpful. But also understand that when we are using language, we should be prepared to be somewhere without technology, without the internet, for example. And then what do we do if we have to communicate with anyone or write a simple message and we don't know how to do that, how to start, how to end? So I do believe in conversations, and that's why I think we have to be aware that they will be using it, and we have to show them how to make good use of these new technologies that they have in their hands, right?
And I'll just say one more thing. If you are following with the questions that were posted, I believe that was question number 3 on the list.
Yes.
Interesting. I spoke to a group of PhD students, first term PhD students at St. Mary's today, that I do every year in the last 2 years in this course. And interestingly, maybe 1 out of about 10 of them had actually really used AI, which I was quite surprised about even at this point. So a lot of the things we talked about was quite new. So I think you're going to get that with students from all backgrounds. Some have not used it, some will use it, and I think it's just meeting the students where they're at. If any of you have ideas or things that you do to teach students to use AI but not have it do it for them, please feel free to put it into the chat as well.
Yeah. And what you said perhaps connects to question 1, and I'll perhaps just address this. But again, we are looking forward to listening to everybody who is here as well. But question 1 is about how can AI be used by literacy teachers in order to enhance their lessons and involve their students in the use of online tools for literacy learning strategies. And I think the first thing that we should take into account is, as Julian said, consider where your students are at. Because again, considering the context that we teach, sometimes we have students who have only one cell phone to share with the family. Other students have, a laptop at home, and they have kids who already speak English and can support them in using technology. So it is, um, in my opinion, it depends a lot at the moment, depends on the moment that you are with your students in class. If you believe they are ready to learn about how to download an AI tool that you believe would support them, um, learning English and understanding the language a bit more, then that's wonderful. Let's do it. But as we know, literacy learners, they need a lot of practice. And then I also believe for that reason that we should be critical. Do my students really need to learn these tools right now? Is it something that will help them? And then after reading some articles, many of the authors, they say that instead of focusing on the how, we should always focus on the why. So why do I want to use AI tools with my students at this moment of their learning? Why is it important for them? And then you can consider how you're going to do it. Perhaps it's only teaching them how to, how to download it and then go step by step. Or perhaps it's just telling them, well, this exists, and then in the near future, in your next levels, you can also learn more about it. I don't know if we have literacy teachers here, if you guys want to say something or share something with us. But that's what comes to my mind when I think about literacy students and AI right now.
Is it Dana? You have a raised hand, so thank you.
Hi, there we go, see if my video is working.
Yeah.
Here we are. Yeah, I'm a literacy teacher. I was a pre-benchmark teacher where we had students who had literacy needs and students who didn't in the one class for a long time. And then a few weeks ago, I actually switched to our literacy department. And I just wanted to say that I agree with your point. I do think it's important for there to be computer and digital literacy in literacy classes. And I think that, I mean, the fact that someone is working on their language, or that they might have lower literacy skills and other things, doesn't necessarily mean that their digital literacy is limited. And it also, sometimes you can use, like, it can be a really good tool for them to have, even if they didn't have it before they came to class. But I do think that your point about asking whether that's what they need to know right now is a really important one, because it can, if they don't have a lot of digital literacy skills before they come to the classroom, it can take a lot of time to figure out how to type the @ symbol when you're logging in and things like that. So you need to think about, and also to make sure that they really understand what they're agreeing to if they click on a EULA, and how far reaching that can be if it's on the internet. So I think it's a really good point that you raised, that it's in my opinion, important to think about whether this is the best tool to be bringing in. And I do think there will be times when it will be. I think it should be a part of literacy classrooms and lower CLB level classrooms, but I also think it's really important to think about the context, as you would in any class, but particularly with students who may not understand the consequences of putting something online, or may take a lot of time in class or outside of class trying to do the basics.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Dana. Absolutely. I'd also kind of like to take a kind of another side of it as well, because when we say having students use AI, before that, I'd like to kind of focus on you or teachers, and we have various levels of AI use and experience ourselves. And there's a lot of things I do, even for my graduate students, for example, that I don't necessarily do AI in the classroom as much, maybe, but I kind of use it in maybe some sort of the preparation stage to maybe speed things up. So that could be making learning materials more accessible. I would guess that there's a few people on this call that have used quizzes, for example. It's like a Kahoot from a few years ago, and quizzes, I believe, has a read aloud option. So using AI in that way for accessibility, and then there are lots of other tools as well you could use to support accessibility. I think Microsoft Word has a read aloud feature as well, and as I know iSans has Microsoft 365, there's the immersive reader, which uses AI as well. And then there's generating varied reading materials. So if you found something you liked, then creating materials that are now graded for your students could be a way into using AI for yourself and then for students. In the same way, developing vocabulary activities. You've had sessions in the past supporting you with lesson planning, and then you can do that with prompting as well. Really, using AI is just, the limit is your creativity. And as teachers, and I've read this and I've had lots of conversations about this with many people, as teachers, we are positioned and primed to be some of the best users of AI because we naturally ask questions and we're naturally inquisitive, and we don't just accept what we first receive, and we're creative. So that works well for us, and then hopefully for our students. So, and also a very good tool for planning and organizing differentiated instruction. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something the students are directly using. It could be something that you're using to help support your learners as well.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Yes, I also agree that we ask um, questions, and I think I've been trying to interact more with AI. And if there is something that I do is like, okay, so what question do I think about the questions that I should ask in order to get a better result for anything that I want to prepare. So asking questions and thinking critically are definitely things that we can improve once we also bring the AI to our classes. And sometimes we can also bring something. So instead of inviting students, like in the case for literacy classes, perhaps we can connect. And if you have, if you are familiar with how to speak with your AI tool, then you can also prepare some speaking activities like repetition, drills, or quizzes, like Julian said. And then this is also a way to bring AI to your class. But then if this, at this stage, you understand it's too much for your learners to be, autonomously using the AI on their devices, you can also use AI, prepare some activities, and then just use the smart boards that we have to bring something more interactive. And all of this will be easy for you to prepare, I'm pretty sure. Do you have any other question? Is there, I don't know if you guys would like to tell us which question you would like us to address. They've shared the questions in the chat, so feel free to tell us a number and then we can jump into that. Do you have any preferences, Julian?
Not at all, no.
No.
Whatever's valuable for everyone listening, or what they would like to talk about as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So maybe we could go with questions 5 and 6 because they are kind of connected. What do you think?
Sure. Let's go for it.
Yeah. So question 5 is like, what's your advice for teachers who don't use AI yet? How should they get it started? And then I think number 6 is probably connect to it because it says, how might the role of ELT teachers evolve with the increasing integration of AI in the classroom?
So I suppose before we start that, I'll do a very informal poll in the chat on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I use it all the time, and
Okay.
1 I don't use it very much. How many of you are using AI? And that could be in any form. It could be generative AI, or it could be something embedded into an app. So just pop it into the chat. Look at that. Oh, look at that. It's always good to know your audience. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I would just like to acknowledge the environmental impact. That is something that is talked about to a certain degree, but then often maybe not talked about enough. It's something I will completely be honest about. I feel somewhat helpless over it. And there was a recent podcast, I think it was the Times Higher Education, it might be that one, and it had an environmentalist on there talking about what was happening within AI in general to support the environment, and how, and I'm not going to excuse the environmental impact here, that's not what I'm trying to do, and how consumption was being reduced, but then because usage of AI was going up, that was probably then bringing it back up again. I have seen that from 2 years ago, we have reduced that impact on, say, a regular chat, but now we have AI like DeepSeek and Deep Research, which I believe uses a lot more. And my only hope can be is that the technology people can manage it and then start to bring it down, and we see positive impacts onto the environment. It is an important conversation, and I don't shy away from it. Where I come from, and I think probably where Sandra's coming from in terms of using AI here is for the betterment of learning and teaching and development and so on. But it is a valid point, and we're not ignoring it.
Yes, yes. Thanks for bringing that.
So we have a good varied usage of AI, and then number 5. Sorry, I'm just going to scroll to number 5 so I can see it again. It was so what advice for teachers who don't use it yet? So if I can go, if you don't mind if I go first there.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
think
go
it's
ahead.
just start using it. It's that kind of that simple. If you don't use it, you are the expert at what you do. And this is something that I kind of learned very early on. I think probably back in 2023, I read a lot of Ethan Mollick. If you haven't read any Ethan Mollick, then read Ethan Mollick. And one of his principles or rules was just try it. Spend 10 hours doing with AI what you would do in any particular context. So in the context of what you do as a teacher, try it out. And then you'll learn very quickly what it's good at and what it's not good at. And that's constantly shifting. So ChatGPT 3.5 was very powerful. We look back at it now, and obviously it was hallucinating a lot. Now we have reasoning models with O3 mini high. We've got 4.5 was just released, and I'm just talking ChatGPT. There's also Claude, there's also Perplexity, Gemini, and so on. And something I presented this morning with the PhD students, and they'd never heard of it, was Notebook LM. And I can't speak highly enough of Notebook LM. It's kind of amazing, and it will generate podcasts for you, and you can interrupt it and have conversations with it. So even just for your own use, try it out. Very quickly, I'll just mention when I do the CELTA courses, we have a language-related tasks assignment where, and those of you who've done the CELTA course will remember it very well, where you are given a series of vocabulary and grammatical and pronunciation items, and you have to analyze them. Probably 10 15 years ago, when the internet, well, longer than that now, isn't it, 20 years ago, once the internet started getting very popular, we could see people trying to do that, candidates doing their language analysis with the internet, and we said, no, you really need to use a grammar book. And I see a similar pattern with AI. They're trying to use AI to do the grammar, but because they don't have that knowledge of grammar, they're accepting what's being given, and it's not necessarily that great, or it's not as accurate as we would like, or as specific or focused. But you, as the expert, try things out, explore how it works for you or how it doesn't, and that's the best way to learn it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So everyone who is here, and during one of my sessions with Julian while we were preparing for this, he told me about Notebook LM, and I think everyone in this room should, as soon as we finish here, you go to the website and learn more about it. It's amazing. So you upload, for example, the topic, any topic that you wanted to create a podcast, and then in 5 minutes or less, they create the podcast with, two people talking about it. And it's amazing. It's so interesting. And then, of course, because as it is AI, then it is also able to do some research on the topic that you posted, and then it connects, So even if you didn't share, for example, well, why is accessibility important for ELT? And then they will kind of, I say they because it's like two people talking. So they will also kind of clarify some terms that perhaps you missed. So I love it, Julian. Thank you so much for sharing it with me and here. And again, this is a very good tool for us, to prepare listening activities, listening assessments, or just have fun with our students. Or sometimes we want to present something that we find a little bit boring. Then we can also use Notebook LM as a way to support us. Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so.
For example, like my course description for my current course on the methods and approaches in language teaching, I don't know how many of my students ever read course descriptions. I won't put anyone on the spot here if whether they do or they don't. But it's not the most inspiring of documents. So I put it into Google and to Notebook LM to generate a podcast for it, which was much more fun to listen to.
Mhm. Yes, no, it is a lot of fun. I'm super excited every time I create something over there right now. But we have a question from Naomi. Thank you so much, Naomi, for sharing your question with us. I'll just read it aloud. What do you think of the effectiveness of teachers creating and using a purposefully constructed AI bot or agent to help learners practice target language or skills?
Great. Great. Does Naima, do you want to tell us, have you ever tried it? And you don't feel free to answer. I don't want to put you on the spot, but feel free to either put it in the chat or and I'll open it up to anyone. Has anyone ever tried doing that? Again, you can just put a yes or a no in the chat.
Yeah. And actually, when I mentioned the literacy activities, and I thought, and I mentioned, well, perhaps you can create something and bring it to the classroom. I was kind of thinking about it. Yes. So
So
yes,
yeah, so Naomi put in the chat yes for CLB 5/6 class to practice getting instructions from a boss. Great. And Naomi,
voice
putting you right on
flow.
the spot here. How did it go? How did it work? Was it received well? She's probably typing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think it's great. Try things out like that. It's often a novel idea as well for the students. So it's something that they haven't really seen before. And it changes things up. So I think that's really a really good idea because you're raising that authenticity. If you think that traditional language teaching and we do role plays or simulations, and doing something like this again is just trying to increase that authenticity as much as you can within the language classroom, but something a bit different as well. And I'm not sure how you necessarily did it, but when I've done something like this with my students, I have them in groups. So I create a couple of ways. Either create a custom GPT, which you can do in ChatGPT. I think I'm not sure if you can do without the paid subscription or not. I must admit, I'm not sure about that. But within ChatGPT, you can create your own GPT. You can give it the the files that you want it to give, that you want it to have as its base knowledge, and then tell the custom GPT how you want it to behave. So that's a good way of doing things. Another way that I've been doing is using what we call structured prompts. So these prompts are usually quite long. They could be 2 or 3 pages long. And by doing that, a structured prompt is called chain of thought prompting. And it takes students or users through a very step-by-step process. So in the context of getting instructions from a boss, you would set the scene, you would give it instructions of what you want how do you want the conversation to go, what you don't want the AI to do, the level. So I'd probably include or attach CLB benchmarks to that, 5 and 6, so it knows the criteria. And then when you copy and paste that into the window, the way it starts at the bottom is it gives you the context and it may ask you a question. And then the user, or the student in this case, just follows the instruction from the GPT. And I've found that quite useful because it's more controlled. It doesn't necessarily always follow. Well, actually, it's pretty good. It's been pretty good. There is talk that the chain of thought prompting may not stick around for too much longer because we now have reasoning GPTs, but they still seem to work when I use them. Just looking in the chat, Naomi said, I'm getting feedback from the teacher and it seemed to work well, but the voice element didn't work, so they had to type. Right, yeah, and creating your own bot takes any work on the part of the student out of it. It looks like a real online agent. Right. Yeah, I suppose it's like creating more material for your students or another activity. It's just that activity is now being carried out with the AI. I did a similar one around course design last year with students, and it was a role play, and they had to. It was like they were they were consultants for a school or for an immigrant services center. It got to ask them to choose a scenario, and then they followed the instructions and they worked in groups to decide on what the answer would be next. So there was like one computer with 3 or 4 students, and they would discuss before they typed the next answer.
Yes, yes. Well, I haven't tried that yet, but I'll definitely give it a try and see. But again, while I was preparing for this session, I read some articles, and there is one which Julian also shared with me. I'll try to share the link here with you. I hope you can access it. But it talks about let me read the name of the article. Generative AI in Language Education, Opportunities, Challenges, and the Need for Critical Perspectives. I enjoyed reading this one, and it's not a long article, but I always like to think about, the critical perspectives, how we can and help students to improve their critical thinking and understanding that it's not only about having the AI doing things for them, but also asking the right questions, understanding the prompts that you can write so that you receive something from the AI that you are using. And then in this article, the authors they mention something that might be connected to what we were discussing. So first of all, they shared this framework and in which they say why we learn languages, and then they mention here some points related to when we learn languages, we learn best if we have a rich language input, if we have targeted and meaningful practice, interactive communication, scaffolded learning. And then in the article, they give lots of examples on how to use AI in order to, scaffold learning. So I think one of the participants here on Mioni says that my concept of using AI is about creating more tailor-made materials for various CLB levels. So Mioni, probably it is connected because I think when we are preparing a lesson or when we are thinking about using AI to help us prepare something for our students, and reminding us of these principles may be very helpful, right? So how can I scaffold learning more? What do my students need, and how can I do that? And again, all the time asking the why question. But then right after that, they share another framework that I'll share again here with you. And then one of the examples is this conversational AI to support interactive and sustained speaking practice. So as Naomi has just brought here to us, it is definitely something that if we learn how to do and we can use AI to teach us how to do it, it is definitely something that, we can also implement and maybe have this chat bot having conversations with learners and providing them with more exposure, with autonomous learning, with individual feedback. So that's where I believe. But then again, we have to teach students how to use it. We have to share some prompts with them or bring these ideas to class and practice this with them. But I don't know. I just thought like it was useful for me. It brought me, many insights. And then I just wanted to share these two frameworks with you. And if you have the chance, read the article because it's I think very helpful and clear for us in terms of the strategies that we should bear in mind when preparing any kind of activities for our classes.
Thanks, Sandra. Yes, I think as well. I'm just going to continue this actually. This line of creating your own chatbots or AI, and it's somewhat related to the question because Mione had a question. Could you explain what aspects are we talking about when it comes to bringing AI into the classroom? So that is during teaching, and what changes in classroom dynamics could be expected? And you're absolutely right, because anytime we bring any technology into the classroom, and we had these conversations with phones, we had these conversations with the internet, it's going to impact your classroom dynamics, it's going to impact your classroom management. And so like any sort of tool or activity, thinking about how you're going to implement it, how you're going to group the students, how you're going to, when the students are going to access it and when they're not going to access it, who they're accessing it with. For me, those questions I would ask regardless of the technology. Regardless of the activity. Can I answer these questions so that the students know that they shouldn't access it at this point, or now we're going to access it, but this is how we're going to do it. So I think the classroom management piece is really, really important. So there are a couple of avenues. There's us using the AI in our preparation or what we do outside of the classroom, and then there's how we're going to use it in the classroom, how we're going to roll it out. Do all the students, I think Sandra mentioned this earlier, do all the students have access to it? Do they have the devices to access it? If you want them to use it outside of the classroom, again, do we have equity in terms of access? So that's something to think about. And I also think that, I think it was probably about 10 years ago, we used to have the Cambridge Learning Management System that would grade students' writing automatically. They would do all their pronunciation and speaking on the computer, and it would grade them. And then their learning management system would then identify what they got wrong and create activities based on what they got wrong so they could do it again. And then once they'd finished those activities, it would then give them the test again, the unit test again, so that they could answer the questions they initially got wrong. So that was using AI all of about 10 years ago. So that's been there for a while. I think Write and Improve came out many, many years ago from Cambridge as well. So that was all AI based. And you can again bring those into the classroom, that sort of idea. And now most people, or everyone who has a phone, has the potential to have a language assistant, like a Duolingo, if you like, to take home with them. They can open up ChatGPT and voice chat, and they can talk to it. So if you created a prompt, if you like, or a GPT, like Naomi has, and they could copy and paste that at home, and they could practice at home, then that's something they can do as well. However you use this, I think you do need to ask yourself questions. How am I going to do it? When do the students access it? How do they access it? Are they doing it individually or with a group? Those classroom dynamic questions are really helpful.
Mhm.
Yoni, thank you for jumping back in. Hopefully I answered your question, but please, yes, go for it if you can turn your mic on.
Hi, thank you. I typed the question because my voice is a little bit ugly, but I feel like it might be easy if I can just ask a follow-up question despite
Yeah.
the process of my voice. So, I'm pretty new to AI, but I'm for it. So, am I right to say that there are two aspects, for example, like first, how I use AI, like ChatGPT, to prepare some materials I can use in class, like any materials as exercises, and then bringing it into the classroom could be I could have an example task, and then we can talk about if you want to use AI to help yourself learn at home. So what could be the boundaries, or what aspects could I be asking, or what prompts I could be asking? For example, brainstorm some ideas, and then what are some things that are not relevant for the topic, for examples, and then students have a better idea of maybe in a paragraph writing exercise, they may know what details to put into, and then we can also set boundaries as what aspects are not actually good for them because it would affect their learning. For example, don't ask AI to write a paragraph for you. So am I right in saying that that's what you guys mean by taking AI into the classroom? Thank you.
I think so. Yeah, I think that sounds. Ultimately, it depends what you want the students to do. So I think that there tends to be this understanding that brainstorm first, check AI second. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way. You can brainstorm with AI first, and then evaluate them. I suppose that depends on what you're trying to do with the task. The same with generating a text. Generate the text and critique it. That's going to take a little bit more language, though, of course. If you're doing that with, I wouldn't recommend doing that with low-level students. Or write something and then ask the AI to give you feedback based on what you've written. Any conversation, if they're using ChatGPT, any conversations, they can share the link so that you can see what they've done. Or if you really want to confine it and add the constraints within the AI, then that's where prompting can be really helpful. Is tell the prompt who it is, what's their role, what the level of the students are, what you want it to ask, and then you can even put the questions in the prompt. Give it some background, some pedagogy as well if you want. So we ask these questions because I tell it, do not reveal the whole conversation to the students. So you just put in as much information as you can, and then test it out. Then test out that, put that, copy and paste that prompt in to the into your large language model and test it and see what it does. Does it do what you want it to do? If it doesn't, then tweak the prompt.
So we can actually, as a teacher, to provide prompts that we want students to go this way, and then have them test them out and see how it works for them.
Yeah, I would test it out myself first, or
Okay,
bring in a couple of colleagues and test it out before it goes to the students. And then when it goes to the students, reflect on what information you're getting back and how they interacted with it. If it's a copy and paste with a prompt sort of approach, then I always sit with the students and do it with them and show them how to do it, first of all, and then go from there.
Okay, got it.
Just because otherwise you think you're being clear, take this prompt, copy it, paste it, put it in here, follow the instructions, and then you realize no one understood what I asked them to do. So do it with, because they're new to the technology. So do it with the students and go through it with the students and how are they feeling about it. I think all of that's really important.
Thank you, Julian, and thank you, Sandra.
No, thank you. Thank you. And also, I think that when we think about how to bringing AI into the classroom, there is now this feeling that everybody should be using AI, and I don't think we have. right? So you can give it a try. We can, test it, see how it goes, see how you feel. And I am sure that each one of you here have a different context where you teach. Considering iSense, I know that there are teachers who visit clients at the company where they work, others visit clients at home, others teach online, and sometimes they have 20 students in class, and sometimes the students are already using the only device they have, sometimes only a cell phone, to, participate and do the activities in their classes. So considering the context that you are immersed in, will tell you how to use AI or not in your class, what your students are able to do according to their level of understanding, not only in terms of the language, but as it was mentioned here, like their digital literacy as well, how much, if they are already, if they have enough agency to do some activities on their own. But again, it's up to you, right? And then we also have our peers. So it's always nice, as Julian said, to share ideas and then say, well, I've been trying to do this. Could you test it for me? What do you think? And ask somebody else. And to review what you started thinking. I also see many instructors trying to use AI as a way to save time. And I think 2 sessions ago, we had Saba and Johnny presenting, talking about Roshi, which is a platform where you can create specific activities thinking about the CLB levels, and it might help you save time. And the same goes with ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, anyone that you want to use. But it's also, I believe, Julian, it's also important to understand what is the policy, right? So according which institution you are working for, and what are the policies regarding the use of AI in the classroom, outside the classroom, what the students can do, what is expected from them. So understanding as well which policies we are following will also give you information, important information, so that you can make the decisions on how to use and bring AI to your classroom.
And also thinking about what your students are learning English for as well. If they're preparing for any sort of exam, then they're obviously going to need to be able to do what you want them to do. But I think it probably comes up in one of the other questions. But we are seeing that AI has a lot of potential and is already being used a lot for productive skills. It's not perfect yet, and I think maybe Naomi mentioned that with regard to the voice. Doesn't always pick up the voice, and I've tried this a few times. I tried to create a GPT to follow a specific method, and then teach me Polish, because I lived in Poland for 8 years, and it didn't quite get my pronunciation, which was very frustrating. So I had to kind of table that. And I've seen others in Australia doing something similar with an application that we unfortunately we can't access here. Where educators can access it and play with these platforms, and they created a similar one in French. And again, they did a live demonstration I saw once, and it wasn't quite picking up on the pronunciation. But we're at the early days. If when we read about AI, we are currently using the worst AI ever, because it's only going to get better and more.
Better and better. Yes, yes, I agree with you. And something that after reading all these articles that is also in my mind is the purpose of using AI. So the purpose to use it in the classroom should be pretty much clear for the students. So they understand why you are asking them, like Mioni mentioned here, oh, for this task, please don't use AI, even though you always have that feeling that they maybe may decide to use it. Or, well, you can use AI for this task because we are brainstorming ideas. But again, especially if we teach adults, it's one of the principles of teaching adults that we should share with them the goals of the lesson and share with them some of the reasons behind what we are doing so they can be better engaged, I don't know, and feel like they are part of the decisions that we are making. And well, I took my master's degree with Julian and also another wonderful professor, Jennifer MacDonald. And I just wanted to share with you another link, if you allow me. So this is Dr. Jennifer MacDonald's website. And she has a very interesting blog, like a post that she created maybe in December last year, in which she shares some ideas on how to address this when and how they are going students can use AI in the classroom. And she even shares one activity that she did with her students. So she created a matching activity, and then there were very clear situations that in which she mentions that students were using AI, and then she says why they were using AI or why they should not use AI. And I believe, according to the blog post, it was like a way to, again, talk to them and explain why we are doing things the way we are, because we are not here teaching English because we like it, because we all do, but because it is also, science. We study a lot to do that well and to provide a good environment for our students. And well, I think this post may address one of the questions that we have in our PDF. I'm not sure if it's question 8 that talks about what kind of tasks we can prepare to discuss the use of AI with students. So once you have a purpose, then you can, it can be an open discussion, but you can also bring these real examples and then talk to them about these real examples. I really liked her approach. And in this blog, she also talks about the assessment scale, which is something that perhaps is not exactly new anymore, right, Julian? But anyway, she brings the metaphor of traffic light, and then by using a traffic light you can also make sure students. So for example, me, I teach 100% online, and I started considering, perhaps using the traffic light as a way to draw my students' attention to activities that I really expect them not to use AI or any other, especially for writing, right? That we really want to see what they've done. And yeah, so I do recommend the blog if you have the chance to go there and read it.
Great, thank you. Do we have another question, I think, that focuses on kind of the assessment side of it? And I can touch on that then. But I think that just to wrap up, I think we kind of went around a little bit the scenic route there as well, and we had some really good questions. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think that question 6 was, how might the role of ELT teachers evolve with the integration of AI in the classroom? And I think we've touched on a bit of that already, and talking about classroom management essentially. And I find that teachers in kind of any context, if you're naturally quite learner-centered, or your tendency is more of a learner-centered pedagogy, then AI is less of a shock when you start using it or implementing it. And again, as I mentioned, like any other tool or any other activity, thinking about why you're using it and do I need to use it? Just because I have a projector in my classroom doesn't mean I have to use it. I can use the whiteboard, for example. So it depends on the context. It depends on what you're doing. So, but I think it does lean more to that learner-centered pedagogy, more of a facilitator as a guide, which if you're already learner-centered, you're doing that already. And then also sharing with the students, be critical of the AI output as well. So don't just accept everything. And I think we talked about prompting a little bit. So yeah, just working in that way. I think facilitating that role as being a facilitator and a guide is really important.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned a question about assessment.
Do we have a question? One of our 1 to 8, one of our 8 questions that was pre-submitted. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if we have one specifically about assessment, but do you have any tips for us
Yeah,
on how to go
as
that
we're in
way?
the habit of sharing links here, I'm going to share you this one.
Uh-huh.
It's the AI. It's funny that Sandra said the AI assessment scale is old. It came out in April 2024, so it's almost a year old.
Yeah.
I did see a post on LinkedIn that I think it's now been translated into 40 different languages, according to the authors. Uh,
Wow.
and um, and so yes, very, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped onto it probably last summer and thought, oh, this looks useful. And a lot of resources started getting mapped to it. And then I think it was revised in December. But the
Mm-hmm.
post I just added to the chat is from someone called Danny Liu from the University of Sydney, and this kind of spoke to me a little bit more than the assessment scale, because we can assign whether students should or shouldn't use AI, but when they leave the classroom, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's that then comes down obviously to conversations, understanding, and trust, and so on. But students in any educational context, lives are busy, and so they may tend to find the easiest and quickest way of doing it. Whereas with this one, I think it embraces AI a little bit more, or it embraces the learning a little bit more, and the realization that we can only control so much. And so we have that secure lane, which is really within the classroom environment. And then we have the open lane where students will essentially do what they want, but we give them some more options. And I think I remember reading one post by him. We don't tell students to use Microsoft Word to type something, because they just naturally do it, and that's probably the direction we're going into with
Mm-hmm.
English language learners, and probably once they hit intermediate and higher. I think those conversations are going to be really important with them, letting them know what's
Mm-hmm.
available to help them practice their pronunciation. We've always had apps. Find something to help your pronunciation, find something to help you with your writing, something that's more personalized for the students. And that now involves AI.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, no, thank you. I'll definitely read this one as well. And I know we are reaching the end of this session, but as I told you, there is a question that many teachers came to me asking, and I'd like to hear your opinion about the asynchronous courses. So if we teach 100% asynchronous courses, do you think these courses should continue be delivered the same way now that we also see that the students have been using AI frequently? So if we don't have any direct interaction with the students and we only teach them online, um, what do you think from the perspective and the research that you did so far? Is there a future for these courses?
That is a difficult question. Does someone else want to answer
Mm-hmm.
that question? How many people here teach asynchronously? Can I ask that question?
Mm-hmm. Let's see if they are here.
So Patrick does,
Patrick, would you like to ask a question, Patrick?
just recently, or even just sharing challenges you've had.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Actually, no, the I've been using AI more like not for my clients because the course I teach is a sector specific course. So they're learning language skills they need to work in long-term care aid. So we're really trying to uh, not have them use AI to create their dialogues, because then they're not actually practicing the skills that they need to be successful in the workplace. But I use AI more in line with, I guess, like a UDL perspective, because I notice like some clients, when they're trying to read the instructions on the assignments, their CLBs are low, that they're actually misreading many words. So I've used AI to convert the text into I could actually to spoken language, so that they have the option of listening to the assignment instructions to help them understand what they need to do. So, and I might use it when I prepare materials also, like when I create role play flowcharts. I use AI to generate clip art to represent different people that they have to play, so that they have a better visual representation. But I don't actually have them, or I don't have them actually use AI.
Hmm. That sounds great. And yeah, the using it for the preparation and materials and is very helpful for sure. Absolutely. I'll just look at some of the other comments. Yes, there is a future as AI still has issues with longevity and requires specific input, says Naomi. As instructors, there is still a need to give learners specific feedback. Exactly. May not always pick up on the full issues, and it's very difficult to even confront them about it because they would ask what made me think they didn't write it themselves, says Katerina. Yeah, I think going to Katerina's comment, it is a bit of a touchy subject. Detection software is not reliable. There's enough literature on that these days, and it discriminates against second language speakers, which I'm sure you're aware of. Doesn't mean they're not using it. So the conversation, and I've mentioned this to faculty and students here at St. Mary's, is when you have that conversation with the students, focus on what they've produced, the content that they've produced, and what you think is missing or is different to what you're expecting, as opposed to going directly at the AI. Is kind of my strategy for that. I think in terms of asynchronous, students, and I think probably what Sandra also means by asynchronous is students using AI to complete their asynchronous courses for them. And if you are in the right algorithms on LinkedIn, you'll see a few videos pop up where someone will create an agent, and it will log into their learning management system. It will go into the course and it will complete it all. It'll even take its time to make it look like it's done it at a reasonable amount of time, and it will complete all the assignments and quizzes. Firstly, at this stage where we are in March 2025, if your students are that proficient with agentic AI, well done, I suppose. And if their English language is good enough to do that, then that's a conversation to have. It may be a problem in the future. I don't anticipate it being a big issue for the majority of your students at this point, but it is something to consider in the future. And I think when it comes to as we move forward with asynchronous courses, it may just be rethinking how a certain assignment is delivered. We may be delivering assignments, for example, in the AI, where they then share a link to what they're doing. I don't necessarily have the answer to that, and I'm just thinking off the top
Yes,
of
of
my head.
course. Yes, no, yes, of course. Katerina and Megan, they also posted some strategies. So sometimes Katerina says, sometimes I ask them to explain certain grammar choices when I know that the grammar is too advanced for them. That's a good strategy, and I think goes in the direction of what Julian was saying. Megan also says, "So that's what I do too. Can you tell me what this sentence means?" Yeah, so finding ways and perhaps confronting them at first may put them in this situation that they will say no, right? But once again we talk and explain, they tend sometimes to say yes. At least some instructors have told me that many students, in the end, they say, yes, I used it because I was in a hurry and I wanted to finish it. And then all the conversation starts all over again. Right. All right. So it's 4:15. Do you guys have any other questions? Anything else that we didn't cover that you would like to mention?
look at Miona's post there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so colleagues really stick to that secured lane from the post that I added from Danny Liu. And I think a lot there are many reasons for that. I don't claim to know, obviously, their thinking for that. From conversations I've had, that can often be fear, because it's very, when you start bringing in something like AI, it can be very free. The power of it is very scary. I created a GPT for one of my colleagues in a different department, which would take her through the process, or help her take her through the process of designing a service learning course for or placement for people who came to us. I said, just try it out and see, we'll see what happens. And it's someone who's very pro AI, but then thought, oh no, is this putting me out of a job? And it's similar if I create something for an educational developer. So it's the same sort of idea. It's staying in that secured lane because it's safe here. However, these tools are available, and they're only going to, in my opinion, and it's probably not just only mine, they are going to grow exponentially and become even more powerful and ubiquitous as well. So I think it's just, again, with teachers like that, if they don't want to use it, that's fine. They don't have to use it. There's no requirement to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just having those conversations and just say, hey, look, this is an activity I did with my students, and this went well, this didn't go so well. And we used AI here, and see if they're open. If not,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay.
Yeah. And before we end, can we do that conversation with the AI, Julian? Because we've been talking about AI forever and we don't ask their opinion, right?
Yeah, we are
So,
going to get quite gimmicky here, so I apologize in advance.
so there is a question here, question number 2, that Julian and we thought that it could be the last question for this session, but we are not answering that. AI will do this for us. So, Julian, I'll let you do this.
Okay, so again, I said this is a little bit gimmicky. I apologize. And I like to interact with AI often by chat, to be honest. A lot of other people like to use voice because obviously it is multimodal now. You can share you can share your environment and talk about your environment with the AI. So I have Chat GPT open here. I know you probably can't see it because of the glare. And what I'll do is I'll turn it onto voice mode, and I'll talk to the AI about kind of what we're doing here, and I'll ask question 2 and see what happens. This may completely work or it might not, but we'll see what happens and see what you think about what it says. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Julian. I'm here to help. Whether it's about your research, teaching, or just a casual chat, what's on your mind today?
Great, thanks. I'm actually in a webinar with some English language teachers in the immigrant learning sector, and we were going to ask you a question about AI. Do you think you could help us?
Absolutely. The question you have about AI.
Oh, I'm getting poor connection. That's not helpful, is it?
No worries. Just let me know what you'd like to ask, and I'll do my best to assist.
Okay, so how do you think AI will impact language courses in the future? Do you think there will be a need for teachers, or will AI replace them at specific levels?
AI is likely to become a powerful tool in language courses, offering personalized learning experiences and on-demand practice. However, teachers will remain essential for guiding learning, providing emotional support, and fostering critical thinking. AI will likely enhance their role rather than replace it.
So if you could give one piece of advice to all the teachers listening, what would it be?
Embrace AI as a tool to enhance your teaching, not replace it. Stay curious and open to learning how it can support you and your students.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you have
Okay. Probably couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. Yes, and we have Mioni like doing this, right? Yes. Let's stay strong and stay connected. And thanks again to Ariza and iSense for partnering on this series of webinars. I think they were pretty useful for all of us. I've learned a lot attending the sessions. And thanks again, Julian. It was wonderful to have you here with us today.
No, thank you very much, everyone, for attending, for having me, and listening to us for the last almost hour and a half. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you both, Julian and Sandra, and thank you for the participants also for having been here with us this whole webinar series. Thank you for imparting your knowledge and for your insights on AI and language learning. We will post as usual, a post-event survey in the chat. So if people can just take a few minutes to fill out the survey, it always helps us improve our events and webinars. And I'd like to also say thank you to Paula and Caroline today that we're here to support interpretation. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I've
Thank
added
you.
links as well into the chat, which are from Cambridge, from the British Council, and also from the ELT Journal on this topic as well. So so you should be able to access those from the links.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.